Chapter 12, Validation. After Wino was transferred out, I was given another cellie by the name of Edward Wino Lanzarin from Daly City. He was from a small neighborhood they called Diablo Park on the east side. It was close to where my mom's apartment was on Hillside, near a school I actually attended as a kid. Wino was just a Norteño, but according to him, he was striving to become an NR member. He was in the hole for getting caught with a weapon. He was a few years older than me, but had a real bad habit of horseplaying and always clowning around, almost to the point where you didn't know when to take him seriously. Even though I was younger, I precluded myself from getting caught up in horseplay or conducting myself like that. As I learned early on, it always ended up going somewhere bad in the long run. It was good to have someone who I could talk about the home front with and who grew up in the same area as me, but at the same time, we were divergent in a lot of ways. On end, this would lead to us bumping heads and not seeing eye to eye about a lot of things. When it came to our schooling and fortifying our knowledge, he was pedantic and lacked any true interest in the topics we studied. This incensed me so badly that I eventually lost respect for him and looked for any reason to engage in petty conflicts with him. In the beginning, I completely avoided playing around with him and warned him if he started, but over time, I succumbed to my own proclivities and fell into it. At 21, I wasn't beyond it. It started out over simple gambling. We gambled for a favorite meal or a number of desserts, whatever was agreed upon. But this quickly got out of hand. I ended up winning all his food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when it came to eating it, I showed no mercy. When he gave up trying to win his food back or gamble deeper into the hole, he came up with the bright idea of playing for punches to the chest or the sides of the arms, a game commonly played in the youth authority. Wino lost badly at times too. Again, I was relentless. I'd literally have him stand up and position his body at a perfect angle so I could deliver the hardest blows possible without breaking my wrist. He became my punching bag, and I'd insist on taking at least 20 to 30 punches a day. Now, not only was I physically abusing him, but I was starving him too. I was out of control. I remember laughing uncontrollably when he'd fall on the floor writhing in pain after I'd hit him. It got so bad that his arms involuntarily convulsed at night, and his body was covered with green, yellow, and purplish bruises. When the blood from the bruising began to wrap all the way around his arms and seep into his chest, I thought he might have gotten blood poisoning. One day when we were getting escorted out to the yard, he stopped one of the COs and told him that he hadn't eaten for 2 weeks and that I was physically abusing him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He flipped the script on me. This came unexpectedly because he didn't say anything that morning, but I played it off like I didn't hear him. He even pulled his shirt off and said, "Look at my body, I'm covered with bruises." Now all of a sudden the jokester didn't want to play anymore. Later on that day after yard, they charged me with assault and battery on a prisoner with intent to commit great bodily injury. They also charged me with possession of a deadly weapon for a loose razor I had hidden in one of my personal letters. Aside from them searching my cell and only looking through my letters where the razor was hidden, they also gave me a confidential disclosure form, a 1030, advising me that a confidential source told them where the razor was hidden. That basically gave me everything but his name, because he was the only one who knew where I kept it. Once again, the DA declined to pick the case up, but now I had the 115 administrative rule violation to worry about, along with what would be at least another 24-month shoe term. Wino was still in my section in another cell above me, so I spent the next couple of weeks trying to get into his head to see if I could manipulate him into dropping the assault charge and owning up to the razor. Honestly, I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to fall for the banana in the tailpipe, but he did. When they called me in to hear my 115, I pled not guilty and called Wino in as a witness. He agreed to drop the assault charges, asserting that they were frivolous, and he stated that the razor was actually his. So once again, I was vindicated and sidestepped another shoe term. As soon as he came out of the hearing, I told him how stupid he was and that I better never catch him out there in Daly City. He eventually transferred out months later, but did so with a huge target on his back for snitching on me. Over the next couple of months, I began getting confidential disclosure forms, 1030s, alleging that I was an NR member and was one of the ones actively orchestrating the conflict between the northern and southern Hispanic inmates. A confidential disclosure form 1030 was basically a brief document explaining that a confidential source provided information about an inmate, and this document was then placed in your central file to support whatever type of action that the administration may pursue against you. In my case, they were using it to open up a validation package against me to permanently take away my mainline status based on my active affiliation with the NR. Chino, Paco, and Sleepy were also receiving the same 1030s, so they were trying to validate all of us. At one point, I got so many repetitive 1030s that I actually stopped saving them and started using them for scratch paper. The sad part about it was that these were coming from my own people, other norteños who were out there on the yard with us, who obviously wanted a program and wanted no part of any conflict with the Sureños. Years later, I would hear that Susanville is notorious for issuing out 1030s. There's even an adage that says it's always 1030 at Susie's house. By January 1992, my validation package was completed and I was officially validated as an active member of the Nuestra Raza. The administration classified this as a disruptive group affiliated with the NF. I managed to sidestep 5 shoe terms in total, only to be validated in the end. My validation was based on 3 principal grounds they considered as points. 1, my tattoos. 2, confidential information. And 3, my continued participation in assaultive behavior on Southern Hispanics. Until recently, after a Mexican mafia associate by the name of Steve Castillo filed an action challenging the flimsy process of the department's validation process, it was being applied effortlessly back in the 1990s, and most of these validations still stand to this day. Honestly, at the time, I didn't care and it didn't even matter to me, but that was only because I was unaware of the full extent of what an indie tournament shoe truly entailed. I knew I was eventually headed for the shoe anyway, but never could I have known that this causatum was going to have an insurmountable impact on the next 2 decades of my life, or that it was about to thrust me into the depths of the Nuestra Familia's home base.